My master is such a sweet, darling liar.
Jeannie's iconic smile in 1965 hit a reality cold enough to freeze your blood. 61 years later, the glamour is gone, leaving only the wreckage of shattered lives. Death wiped out the legendary cast without mercy, one broken by the agonizing loss of her child, another trapped in constant fear of domestic violence, and silent, lonely deaths consumed by addiction. Whose story shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments.
I love you, and I want you to be my wife.
Oh.
Behind the serious charm of Major Anthony Nelson was a man whose life behind the scenes was increasingly spinning out of control. Larry Hagman was born on September 21, 1931, in Fort Worth, Texas. At 34, he became Major Anthony Nelson, the serious astronaut whose life was turned upside down by Jeannie in I Dream of Jeannie from 1965 to 1970. His chemistry with Barbara Eden made Hagman a familiar face on American television, but behind the laughter, his life increasingly spun out of control. Hagman married Maj Axelson in 1954 and later openly admitted that he had been unfaithful. At the same time, alcohol became an increasingly dangerous part of his life. On the set of I Dream of Jeannie, conflicts with producer Sidney Sheldon and his outbursts sometimes made the atmosphere tense. Later, Dallas turned Hagman into a superstar as the ruthless J.R. Ewing and brought him a huge fortune. But the more successful he became, the heavier the price he paid. Years of drinking damaged Hagman's body. In 1995, severe liver disease forced him to undergo a life-saving liver transplant. In the following years, he faced many health problems, including cancer, but still refused to leave the screen. In 2012, Hagman returned to Dallas despite his declining health. Just months later, on November 23, 2012, he died at 81 from complications related to cancer. Larry Hagman died with an estimated net worth of around $30 million. From the gentle astronaut Anthony Nelson to the cold J.R. Ewing, he conquered American television. But behind that success were decades of alcoholism, illness, and choices that came at a very high price. Behind the sharp wit of Dr. Alfred Bellows was a man who spent much of his life in silence and secrecy. Hayden Rorke was born on October 23, 1910, in Brooklyn, New York. At 54, he became Dr. Alfred Bellows, the psychiatrist constantly driven crazy by the secrets surrounding Tony Nelson in I Dream of Jeannie. From 1965 to 1970, Rorke made millions laugh. But the man behind Bellows spent much of his life in silence and secrecy. Rorke had a long relationship with director Justice Addis beginning in the 1950s. But in Hollywood at the time, openly having a same-sex relationship could destroy a career. So while known across the country, Rorke could not publicly acknowledge the most important person in his life. In 1979, Addis died. After decades together, Rorke lost his partner and entered old age with an emptiness that could not be filled. But that loss was only the beginning of his painful final years. He developed multiple myeloma, a serious blood cancer that slowly weakened his body while he continued acting. The man who once made audiences laugh now had to quietly watch his own body deteriorate. Hayden Rorke died on August 19, 1987, in Toluca Lake, California, at 76. He was cremated, ending a life of contradictions, known by millions but forced to hide his love, spending his life bringing laughter, while his final years were filled with loss, loneliness, and illness. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated at around $1.5 million, a quiet legacy of a man who gave joy to the world, while enduring his deepest grief in silence. Behind the cheerful smile of Major Roger Healy was a man who endured a broken marriage and a father's greatest pain. Bill Daley was born on August 30th, 1927, in Des Moines, Iowa. At 38, he became Major Roger Healy, Tony Nelson's mischievous friend in I Dream of Jeannie, from 1965 to 1970. Daley made audiences laugh, but his life behind the camera was far less joyful. Married Patricia Anderson in 1949, and they adopted 2 children. Years away from home, long filming schedules and work pressure gradually damaged their marriage. After 27 years, they divorced in 1976. His later relationships also failed to bring the peace he sought. Then came a loss no comedy could hide. His daughter Kimberly died. For a father who spent his career making others laugh, losing his child left a void that laughter could never fill.
After I Dream of Jeannie, Daley found further success as Howard Borden in The Bob Newhart Show. He became a familiar face in American sitcoms, but he never truly escaped the shadow of the stars beside him.
In his later years, he stepped away from Hollywood and lived more quietly. Bill Daley died on September 4, 2018, in Santa Fe, New Mexico at 91. His net worth was estimated at around $10 million. He spent nearly his entire life making America laugh, but behind the cheerful Roger Healy was a man carrying a lifetime of quiet heartbreak. Behind the commanding presence of General Winfield Schaefer was a man who spent his life just one step away from stardom. Vinton Hayworth was born on June 4, 1906, in Washington, D.C. At 62, he joined I Dream of Jeannie as General Winfield Schaefer from 1968 to 1970. His commanding presence and subtle humor made him memorable. But while Schaefer remained full of life on screen, Hayworth's health was already failing. Related to actress Rita Hayworth, he spent years under the pressure of comparison and trying to build his own name. His first marriage to Jean Hayworth ended in divorce. He later married Florence Rice. But years of constant work and mostly supporting roles brought continued pressure. Hayworth appeared in Hazel, Zorro, and many popular shows, but Hollywood never truly made him a star. Behind his calm presence was the frustration of an actor who spent decades working without reaching the spotlight. More seriously, Hayworth suffered from heart disease. By the time he was filming I Dream of Jeannie, his health had become increasingly fragile, but he kept working. On May 21, 1970, Vinton Hayworth suddenly died of a heart attack, just 2 weeks before his 64th birthday. Episodes featuring him continued to air after his death, creating a haunting image. Audiences still saw General Schaefer alive on screen, while the actor behind him was already gone. Hayworth died at 63, with an estimated net worth of around $1 million, ending decades in Hollywood while spending most of his career in the shadows of fame. Which do you think was more tragic? Hayworth dying too soon, or spending his life in Hollywood without ever truly reaching stardom? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Behind the bright and cheerful image of Amanda Bellows was a life heading toward a tragically early end. Emmeline Henry was born on November 1, 1928, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In 1966, at 37, she became Amanda Bellows, the cheerful and curious wife of Dr. Alfred Bellows in I Dream of Jeannie. From season 2, Amanda made Henry a familiar face to millions. But behind that bright image, her life was heading toward a tragically early end. Henry was married to actor Mark Roberts, but the marriage ended in divorce. After I Dream of Jeannie, her career began to slow down. Major roles became scarce, leaving her with guest appearances in The Bob Newhart Show, Love, American Style, and 8 is Enough. Then, before her career could recover, Henry was diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor. Her health declined rapidly, but she continued working during her final years. On October 8, 1979, Emmeline Henry died in Palm Springs, California, just weeks before her 51st birthday. She was buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City. After bringing laughter to millions of families, Henry's life ended at 50 after a brief battle with a deadly illness. Her net worth was estimated at around $500,000. Hollywood once made her recognizable across America, but in the end, the time she was given was cruelly short. Behind the tough and commanding image of General Martin Peterson was a life worn down by silent struggles and failing health. Barton McLean was born on December 25, 1902, in Columbia, South Carolina. At 62, he became General Martin Peterson, the tough and commanding officer in I Dream of Jeannie. But unlike his strong screen image, McLean's life gradually fell into years of instability. His first marriage collapsed under long absences, work pressure, and increasing alcohol abuse. Constant conflict and emotional distance eventually destroyed the marriage. He later married Rosemary McLean, but financial pressure and career uncertainty continued to weigh on the family. Despite appearing in more than 200 films, McLean was mostly typecast in supporting roles as tough men. As alcoholism began affecting his work, he lost important opportunities and took smaller roles to remain in Hollywood. By the time he joined I Dream of Jeannie, years of smoking and stress had seriously damaged his health. Cancer appeared and quickly devastated his body. On January 1, 1969, Barton McLean died in Santa Monica, California, just 1 week after his 66th birthday. He left behind his wife, an adopted daughter, and a career spanning decades. McLean's net worth was estimated at around $2 million. He spent his career playing tough men, but his life off-screen was worn down by alcoholism, a broken marriage, career pressure, and finally the disease that took his life. Behind the commanding image of General Wingard Stone was a personal life filled with conflict and dark shadows. Philip Ober was born on March 23, 1902, in Fort Payne, Alabama. At 63, he appeared in I Dream of Jeannie in 1965 as General Wingard Stone, a hot-tempered and commanding officer, but his powerful screen image sharply contrasted with a personal life filled with conflict. Ober married actress Vivian Vance in 1941. Behind their image as a Hollywood couple was a troubled marriage. According to accounts of their relationship, Vance endured control, emotional abuse, and physical violence. As she became more famous through I Love Lucy, jealousy and tension made their home life increasingly difficult. In 1959, their 18-year marriage ended in divorce. Ober later married Jane Westover, but the shadows of his past remained part of his story. Despite appearing in major films such as From Here to Eternity and North by Northwest, Ober never became a top star. He eventually left Hollywood and moved to Mexico. In his final years, Ober's health seriously declined. He died in Mexico City on September 13, 1982, at 80. Philip Ober's net worth was estimated at around $1.2 million. He often played powerful men on screen, but his personal legacy was overshadowed by a marriage marked by jealousy, control, and allegations of violence. Behind the elegant beauty of Melissa was a woman who endured years of hidden violence and emotional nightmare. Karen Sharp was born on September 20, 1934, in San Antonio, Texas. At 30, she appeared in I Dream of Jeannie in 1965 as Melissa, Tony Nelson's elegant former girlfriend. Though her role was brief, Sharp stood out for the beauty that once made her shine in Hollywood. But behind that perfect appearance were years of tension and fear. Sharp married actor Chester Marshall in 1957. According to her, the marriage became an emotional nightmare, with violent behavior and physical abuse that left her constantly afraid. She hid her pain and smiled in public as if nothing was wrong, while at home she lived in fear of the next conflict. Sharp eventually filed for divorce, but leaving the marriage did not immediately heal the wounds. She became cautious, lost confidence, and suffered anxiety even at work. In 1966, she married director Stanley Kramer and gradually left acting to focus on family and production work. They remained together for 35 years until Kramer died in 2001, leaving a major void in her life. Today, Karen Sharp is 91 and spends much of her time preserving Stanley Kramer's film legacy. Her net worth is estimated at around $3 million. Audiences once saw a beautiful and elegant Karen Sharp on screen. But behind that image was a woman who endured violence, emotional distress, and years of fear within her own marriage. Behind the magical smile of Jeannie was a woman who endured tragedies no magic could ever erase. Barbara Eden was born on August 23, 1931, in Tucson, Arizona. At age 34, she became Jeannie, the charming Jeannie who became the heart of I Dream of Jeannie from 1965 to 1970. The role turned Eden into a television icon, but behind that smile was a life that fell apart more than once. She married actor Michael Ansara in 1958. As Eden's fame grew, their marriage became increasingly strained. Years of instability and conflict left her living between the glamour of Hollywood and a home that was falling apart. The couple eventually divorced in 1974. After I Dream of Jeannie, the very role that had taken Eden to the top became a huge shadow over her career. She became typecast as Jeannie. Major roles grew increasingly scarce, and it took years for her to make her mark again with Harper Valley PTA in 1978. Her second marriage to Charles Fiegert also fell apart amid disagreements and tension, but the cruelest blow was still ahead. In 2001, Matthew, Eden's only son, died of a heroin overdose at the age of 35. After failed marriages and the harshness of Hollywood, she now had to endure the most devastating pain of all, losing her only child. Today, Barbara Eden is 94 years old, living peacefully with her third husband, architect John Eichholz, and still making appearances at some events. Her net worth is estimated at around $10 million. Jeannie once had magic to make wishes come true. But in real life, Barbara Eden had to survive tragedies on her own that no magic could ever erase. Do you think the price Barbara Eden paid for fame was too high? And if she had the chance to choose again, would she still want to become Jeannie? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Behind the regal presence of the master of the genies was a man who lived through nearly a century of upheaval and constant struggle. Abraham Sofair was born on October 1, 1896, in Rangoon, Burma, now Yangon, Myanmar. At 70, he appeared in I Dream of Jeannie in 1967 as the powerful master of the genies. His deep voice and regal presence made the character memorable, but behind that calm image was a man who had lived through nearly a century of upheaval. Sofair married Psyche Christian and had 6 children. His family life faced the pressure of constantly moving between Burma, England, and eventually America. War and repeated new beginnings brought financial uncertainty, forcing Sofair to work constantly to support his large family. Despite appearing in major productions such as Captain's Courageous and later Star Trek, opportunities became fewer as he aged. Once a respected actor, he watched Hollywood gradually move past him, but continued working even as his strength declined. By the time he joined I Dream of Jeannie, he was 70. His powerful character hit a very different reality. Sofair was growing old in an industry, always ready to replace faces from the past. On January 21, 1988, Abraham Sofair died of congestive heart failure in Woodland Hills, California, at 91. He died at the Motion Picture and Television Country House, ending a life shaped by war, migration, and more than half a century of uncertainty as an actor. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated at around $800,000. A quiet finish for a man who gave decades to his craft, carrying his family through war and change while facing his final years in silent endurance. Behind the sharp, dominant image of Jeannie's mother was a woman whose life was marked by quiet loss and a fading spotlight. Florence Sundstrom was born on February 9, 1918, in New York. At 47, she appeared in I Dream of Jeannie in 1965 as Jeannie's mother, a sharp, dominant woman always ready to use magic to protect her daughter. The brief but colorful role contrasted sharply with the quiet losses in her own life. Sundstrom married singer Ronald Graham, but their marriage faced pressure from demanding schedules and long separations. Then in 1950, Graham suddenly died at just 38, leaving Sundstrom alone with the tragic loss of her husband. Once a respected Broadway actress, she gradually watched her career fade. Hollywood never gave Sundstrom the position she once had on stage. Major roles disappeared, forcing her to accept smaller parts in The Rose Tattoo, Bachelor in Paradise, and television shows to keep working. More painfully, as she grew older, she was increasingly passed over for younger actresses. A woman who once lived for applause watched herself slowly being forgotten by the industry. Florence Sundstrom died on June 25, 2001, in Los Angeles, at 83. She had no children, her husband had been gone for more than half a century, and her once successful stage career had become a distant memory. Her net worth was estimated at around $400,000. A quiet ending for a woman who once stood under the Broadway lights, but spent much of the second half of her life watching that spotlight fade away. And that is what time has brought to the cast of I Dream of Jeannie. Behind one of the happiest sitcoms on American television were lives filled with loss, illness, broken relationships, and endings that no magic could change. But more than 60 years later, Jeannie, Tony Nelson, Roger Healy, and Dr. Bellows still live on in the memories of millions of viewers. Which character from I Dream of Jeannie do you remember most? And which actor's story surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. We would love to hear your answer. If this video takes you back to the wonderful days of classic television, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you do not miss our next stories. Thank you for staying with us until the end. We wish you good health and peace, and we will see you again on our next journey into the lives of Hollywood legends.